Hi, in this video we're going to look at how to use a list, and we're going to do this by creating a program that will let somebody enter a bunch of test scores and then drop the lowest score when it goes to calculate out the average. So let's get started with this. I've already started a file to type this in. We're going to go ahead and start with the main function. So what we want to do in here is we need to call some other functions. We need to get the scores, and we need to get the total of the scores. So we're going to do two functions for those. And then we need to find the lowest score, and we'll use a built-in uh, function for that. And then we need to drop the lowest score. So let's go ahead and start with this. We're going to do scores are going to be equal to get scores. Okay? Then we need to get the total. So total will be equal to get total. And we got to pass in scores for that. And then we want to get the lowest score from this. That's going to be our minimum value of scores. And scores is going to be a list that we're going to hold the scores in. Okay. Then we need to adjust our total is going to be minus equals lowest. Okay. Hope everybody's with me so far. Okay. We need to calculate out the average. So average is going to be equal to our total divided by the length of our scores minus 1. Okay. So the length is going to be all of them, all the scores, and then we took out the lowest one, so it's one less than that. And then we want to print average with lowest score dropped. Okay, and then average. Okay, that's our whole main function there. So I'm in the habit of putting all my other functions above main. It's from my old programming days when we programmed in a language called Pascal. And in Pascal, it compiled everything, so everything had to be in order. So when it got down to main and get scores wasn't already compiled, wouldn't know where it is and wouldn't run. So you had to have things in order. Python, you don't, but it's just a habit that I'm in. I'm doing this, so that's what I'm going to do here. You can put them below main if that's more comfortable for you. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is get scores. And in here, what we want to do is we need to set up a blank or an empty list. So we'll do that, call it test scores. We want to get the first value. So value is going to be equal to a float input and our test score. So then while value let's do this a little different. Okay, let's take off this float out of here. Just got to thinking about this. Because we do it one of two ways. We could do it as entering it as a string, like we're going to do here, and then converting it. So now we can do while value does not equal quote quote, where they just press enter to get out of the program, or we could do it with a float and have them enter a value that's less than 0 and do it that way. I'm going to do it this way. You can do it either way. So while value does not equal quote quote, then we want to do is convert value. So value would be equal to value, whoops, float value. Okay. So then test scores dot append value. Okay, now we're in this one, we're going to assume that they're going to enter a legitimate float number. Okay. If we weren't sure that they would do that, then we'd have to make sure that this was a float value before we did the conversion on here. But we'll go ahead and do it this way. So once we got that entered, then we need to go ahead and have them enter another value. And on this one, I'm going to put in here press enter to quit, so they know to do that. Okay, we got everything entered in here now. So then we can return test scores. Okay. So what I'm going to do here, and this is a little bit different, I'm going to put a line in here, print scores, and then I'm going to comment out everything else. So what this allows us to do is to test scores and make sure that it's working, or get scores, make sure that it's working before we go on with the next one. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I've already got it saved out there, so I'm going to do a save. I called it droplowestscore.py. And then we'll run this. Enter test score, 76. Enter another test score, 98. 89. 76 again. Let's do 75. It's different. And then just press enter, and there we've got the scores. Okay. So everything worked great on that. So now what we can do, I'm going to minimize this down or shrink it down a little bit here and move this over here. Okay. So now what we need to do is enter the next function, which is to drop the lowest score. Oh, I'm sorry, wrong thing. To get the total. So it would be right here. Call it get total, passing in our value list. So in here, we're going to set total equal to 0.0. We've been working with floats. For num in value list, so this is a nice way of using a for loop to go through a list, pick out each number out of there. As long as we're not modifying the values in the list, this will work. And so then just total plus equals num. Okay. That's all we need. So then we just return total. So now I'm going to move my quote mark on here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take out this print statement here. We don't need it anymore. And I'm going to move out my comment here. I'm going to do a print total and then put my comment back in here. Okay. So now we can test this one out. So I'll go run this again and save the changes. So let's do some easy ones here. We'll do 50, 60, and 70. So we have 130, so that'd be 180. And enter to quit, and there's my 180. So that worked. Okay, so I know both of those are working. And the reason I like doing this is now what goes on here is that I've tested both of these, and I know that both of my functions work. So now when I take out my quote marks here, I'm going to take out this total thing here too. Then that means that the rest of it, if there's an error in there, would be in this stuff here, or the way that it interacts with the functions, and I've limited the locations of where my errors are. Let's go ahead and run the whole thing now, see what happens here. Okay, so enter test score, we're going to put in 92. Okay, enter another test score, or enter to quit, so I'm going to put in 67, 75, 88, and then I'm going to hit enter to quit, and my average comes out to be 85. Now, what happens if, let's go ahead and run this again real quick. What happens if we come up with a number that's doesn't add up correctly like that, if you know what I mean on there. So let's go ahead and we're going to do 97, 83, 87, and 91, and 51. 51 will be removed out of there. We get 89.5. Now, there is a possibility that at some point you could have a running decimal. So I'm going to go in here and modify my print statement here and do a colon dot 2F. So it just does it to 2 decimal places. Run it one more time. And our test score, 65, 99, 95, 83, 79, and 91. Press enter, and we get 89.40. Okay, so hopefully this helps you out with working with lists. Didn't do a whole lot with the list other than adding stuff to that, but it gives you an idea of how lists work, and then you can look through the different functions that are available with lists for popping values off of a list, inserting, things like that that you might want to be able to do with the list. So I hope this helps you out. Bye.